We haven't seen something like this, even in the Middle East, which, as you know, is has a lot of brutality and savagery in it. We haven't seen savagery like this since ISIS. When you have killers, scores of hundreds, really, of terrorists who invaded Israel on Saturday morning in trucks with AK-47s and just mowed down people who were at a dance festival, went into people's homes, killed whole families, kidnapped children, women, elderly. This thing is sick and it's savage, and you really have a battle between the forces of civilization on the one side and the forces of barbarism, and civilization is going to have to win. And that's exactly what we're going to do in the days ahead. And as you heard from Secretary Blinken, it may take some time, but we're going to exact such a high price that not only will Hamas never consider doing this again, I think none of Israel's enemies are going to ever think about doing something like this again. You know, the feeling of euphoria on the other side, Israelis, those of a certain age, remember 1973, when a surprise attack was launched against us on 2 different fronts. There was euphoria then for a few days, but then Israel turned the tide. And the end of the war looked very different than the beginning of the war, and this is exactly what's going to happen now.
Minister, based on what you've just told us, can we just assume then that a full ground invasion is inevitable?
We're going to do whatever we have to do to send a lesson that they're going to understand for many, many decades. Not just Hamas, not just the other terror organizations in Gaza, but all the terror organizations and all the enemies of Israel, and Iran is the biggest enemy of all, and they're pulling the strings behind the scenes, giving money, giving weapons, having meetings to try to coordinate attacks in Israel. And as I speak to you, Iran is trying to push other people into the theater of war. We're going to have to send a message to everybody, because Israel, you know, as you know, we're a tiny country. We're about the size of New Jersey. America's about 40 times the population that we have, which goes to show you how heinous the attack was yesterday. Because when you have maybe 1,000 people in Israel who were killed on a single day, and your population is 40 times the size, it's around 40,000 Americans. That's more than 10 9/11. So you can imagine the sense of disgust that we have. We have to send a message to all of Israel's enemies, because we're a strong country, but we're tiny, and we can go from strength to vulnerability. I think people are going to see the strength of Israel, the might of Israel, and I hope that the wall-to-wall support that we appreciate, that we have today from President Biden, the support on both sides of the aisle in Washington, I hope in the days ahead that that support continues when Israel has to do what it has to do in order to exact such a heavy price from this terror organization that not only do they not threaten us, that they don't threaten any civilized country around the world. Believe me, this will inspire terrorists the world over, just like you had the ISIS caliphate that started inspiring people all around the globe. The world came together and understood they have to crush that caliphate. We have a force like that right in our backyard, not thousands of miles away, but right in our backyard, a few meters over the borders, and we're going to have to crush both their capability and also their spirit. They will rue the day 2 days ago. We're going to remember that day. Israel will always remember that day, but all the terror organizations around us are going to remember this period for a very long time, and the critical miscalculation that Hamas made, thinking that it was going to be business as usual in Israel. Believe me, it is not. The people are outraged, and they have awoken not a sleeping giant, but a sleeping Maccabee. And they're going to see it in the days and weeks ahead.